Chief, thank you. Without you and Dick, I think I'd still be wandering around University City and, trying to find my way into the Palestra, which, when I was an undergrad, we would just usually lift each other up and climb through a window.
Oh, see, that was always the running joke about Rec Hall. Nobody ever really knew what the attendance was because everybody knew doors. They could get in. Not today.
And I don't know, I can't confirm this, but I thought someone told me years ago when I was coming up there, the games at Rec Hall in your Atlantic 10 days, that it was the same architect.
It is.
As the Palestra.
It is. Exact same guy.
Because, it sure looks it.
Oh, it's one's blue, one's red. And it's really kind of cool. It's like that. So,
how about that?
Two great buildings. Joe, I'm of the opinion, and you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, but that UConn, Houston, Purdue as ones, but there's a big distance as to who is the fourth number one seed. Am I on the right track?
Yes, I think those three have separated, and I could make legitimate, very winning sounding arguments for all three of them as number one overall, and I suspect we'll waste a lot of hot air and digital memory over the next 3 weeks debating that, unless or until someone separates. But the reality and the practical application of it this year is we know where all those three teams are going, whatever their order is. So, moving on to the rest of your question, yes, there is a gap. Arizona in the fourth overall spot, which would be the last number one seed. Arizona is actually closer to the two teams right behind them, Carolina and Tennessee, than they are to the top three. Arizona plays tonight at Arizona State. It's last game there with them as Pac-12 members.
Yeah.
And, they could lose. Tennessee could win big against Auburn tonight. And maybe tomorrow morning we'll wake up and we'll have a new number one seed. Yeah. But that's the scenario at this point at the top of the bracket.
That's why I look at the conference tournaments, and the conference tournament champion, if it happens to be in that grouping, might be the separator that does it. I mean, we'll see.
To the extent that, this committee or any recent ones actually pay that much attention to conference tournaments.
Yeah.
Because, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence to suggest, particularly, in your league with that late Sunday game on selection day, that, it's not always the most valuable chip to get when it comes to your eventual placement in the bracket.
Oh, no. When it comes to the Big Ten, no. Okay, the Big Ten. The committee's just got it on.
We've seen it over and over.
Right. I mean, they've got it on in the background. That's about the extent of the importance of it to the committee. It's on TV. Is it over yet?
I'm not going to name names, but I know committee members in years past who've already been on a plane back to their campuses while the Big Ten championship game is underway and the selection show hasn't even come on yet.
Right.
And I'm not faulting them. They all have jobs.
Right.
And important jobs. But it does kind of make me wonder sometimes where those of us who do brackets, we're sitting there grinding away with a pencil and an eraser at 5:25 on selection Sunday night when, maybe we should be having a bourbon.
I like the latter suggestion, by the way. All right, so.
Well, I wouldn't know personally because, I subscribe to the theory that too much of any brown liquor will stunt your growth. So I would know nothing really at all about it.
Okay. That's an inside joke between the two of us. Because a lot of people don't see you. They see you on TV sitting, so that's why.
Well, how about we just leave it at this? I'm taller on TV because of the camera.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so we'll always ask about...
You could have had any guest today. You didn't have to get the silly one.
Oh, I got the one I have a lot of fun with. How about that?
There you go.
Okay, so always going to be asked about last four in, out. So at this hour, since nobody's playing at this hour, who's last four
Right.
and who's first four begging to get in?
Yeah, at the moment, and we do have a new bracket up today, so I should probably follow that. Last four in order: New Mexico, Providence, Virginia, Gonzaga. Providence, Virginia, both playing tonight on the road. And then first four out: Villanova, Colorado, Texas A&M, and Utah. Colorado and A&M both playing tonight, both at home.
Virginia is an interesting case. You know,
Yeah.
They've been going along,
And,
and they can't score.
boy, when they're good, they're really good. But if they make it in, I'm certainly not going to circle them many times on my bracket.
No.
For the very reason that you're pointing out. And, that game last, I guess, was it Saturday or Sunday? They're in. I was reminded, wasn't it a Virginia-North Carolina game back in the 80s in the ACC final? Dean Smith scored a score against Ralph Sampson that led to the shot clock directly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When four
I mean, I was a child, but I seem to remember
and
that.
I was not. I mean, yeah, it did. He went four corners and was like, well, we can't watch this.
Oh, it was like, 33-32 or something.
Well, that's okay. With a shot clock at a 3-point line, Penn State in the Big Ten quarterfinals in 2011. I think this is the game that got him in eventually. Beat Wisconsin 36-33. And Dick Girardi had the great line in the postgame. Hey, Steve, when does the second half start?
That sounds just like him. Well, we've all covered teams like, would take a team 3 halves to get to 80.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, one of these years we're going to get Virginia, Wisconsin in a tournament game.
Oh, football.
And, CBS might decide they want to have bowling on.
That just screams true TV. All right.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Or false TV.
Oh, yeah. So how many could the Big Ten get when it's all said and done, in your opinion?
I think the 6 that are in are varying degrees of solid. The second trio of the 6, Nebraska, Michigan State, Northwestern, are all kind of in that 8, 9, maybe 10 range.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that 8s and 9s don't fall out of the field at this point. They do. But you got to try.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So that then leaves the discussion and turns it to Iowa, which had a nice win last night.
I noticed.
And I have them next 4 out at 75th overall. I don't think they'll ultimately make it because I don't think they're good enough.
Right.
And on paper, 2 and 8 in quad 1 isn't going to get it done. But there's certainly opportunity for them to get a winning streak here and play their way up and in. But there has never been. There's a significant gap between the last 4 in and the first 4 out.
Yep.
And then another significant gap before the next 4 out. The gaps the size of which, A, I've not remember seeing, and B, that they fall exactly on the foursomes. It's almost like, they're getting paired up for a shotgun starting golf.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're going to put these 4 on the 12th hole and these 4 in the 10th hole, and these other 4 are so different, you're going to play the short course.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. You're going to be over at the par 3 course, have a good time.
That's where I'll be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's like, see, that's the Girardi game. He loves wedge putting. Doesn't bring a driver.
And he should stick to that. And should I too? But I'm just, I'm still delusional enough to think I might get better.
Well, and here is, aren't we all? We always get that. We always get that par in 18. Go, hey, I think I'll come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
But here is the part, for example, you talk about Iowa. If it continues on the path they're on to be an 8 seed, well, that means they get Purdue if they win. And I think that stalls exactly what you're talking about. That's the problem they're going to have moving forward. It would be an opportunity, but an opportunity would be a long shot.
Also an opportunity, right?
Yeah, right.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yep.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't bet a mortgage payment on Iowa in that game, unless it was your mortgage payment.
Well, of course you would. That's one thing I've always admired about you. When it came to anything I had, you were always willing to bet it. I always felt that was a solid strategy.
Well, I just, we all have our fathers to a degree on our shoulders here. And mine always said, Joseph, that's why they call it gambling.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
And I'd be like, okay, Dad. He also told me I had a face for radio, so
that was a given in my house, and somehow I've made a living out of it. Who knows?
He was gone long before all this TV stuff. God only knows what he would say.
I know.
Actually, I do know. He'd say his mother and I can't believe they're paying him to talk.
Well, you do it well. The ACC thing obviously came up. It's like I had with all due respect, I had a laugh out of it. Okay, part of it is knowing you and knowing what you put into it. It's like, okay. But how many?
Yeah, what did I say exactly? Like, I'm still trying to figure that out.
You didn't say anything, okay? You literally just gave an analysis at this hour what you thought. It didn't mean it doesn't change. Right? Everybody.
And now apparently, like I've spoken ill of their recruiting, and I should stay in my lane, and blah blah blah. I think I was simply asked, having pointed out the pretty significant drop-off in seeding for ACC teams in recent years, I was asked what I thought caused that. Yeah. And I think I said they probably don't have the same number of really good players.
Yeah. Okay. But
they can recruit whoever they want, but look, whenever these things happen, I generally, I should just be quiet, keep my powder dry, and wait for Selection Sunday, because it all kind of comes out in the wash. But the reality is the number of people non-publicly coming after me with ACC affiliations, and again, not naming names, makes me want to go on the air and say, stop whining. And I do have a breaking point, and it might be soon.
Right, and I understand, but
they are whining.
Right, but people don't understand.
They're not as good at basketball.
Right.
Like, it's not a perception problem, it's a basketball problem. When you averaged more than one number one seed for 2 decades, and then go 5 years without one, when your best seed in the tournament in 2 of the last 3 years is only a 4, that's not perception. That's not gaming the net. This is not like the single bullet theory in the grassy knoll.
Right.
That's performance at basketball, period.
But you're not sitting there and putting a conference against a conference. You're comparing Virginia and what they've done to this hour versus Utah and what they've done to this hour. It has nothing to do with what conference they're in. It depends on
correct.
I mean, it's about the opponents that they play along the way, and of course, the vast majority are conference opponents in the Pac-12, and the vast majority are ACC opponents. I got that part. But that's what it comes down to. What's the overall body of work? And it just turns out that there aren't as many ACC teams' body of work that's good enough to get home.
Yeah, and I mean, look, sometimes expansion's a good thing. The Big 12 has added the number one team in the country.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
The ACC has too many non-factors now, and it's not about to get better.
No.
With SMU, Stanford, and Cal.
Nope.
I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but I guarantee it wasn't a basketball person.
No, exactly right. Now the Big 12.
And you know, for those who can't, it is not a conference debate in the committee room, but, you know, because we live in the real world of fans who like to put their chest out about their teams and their leagues. I get it. Yeah. But, like, the last team in the field right now from the Big 12, they're ninth, is Texas, which was winning by, like, 30 at a 7 seed last night.
Yep.
The last team in the field from the ACC, their fifth, is Virginia, who we talked about.
Yeah.
Now, if Virginia and Texas played today on a neutral court, what do you think the boys in Vegas would say?
Right. Exactly.
Like, I'm just the messenger.
Right.
And I know this sounds incredibly arrogant, and I don't mean to be. I'm also not wrong.
Right. You have a track record.
Well, I mean, there is that.
Yeah, you have a track record, but there's another element to it as well. Everyone has to understand, like you put out the new bracket today. These are your snapshots at the hour. They are not the final product. Everything is a work in progress, right? Which you understand, but there's a lot of people that don't understand that.
And, I mean, look, I think it's cyclical. But if I were, you know, a data scientist for the ACC, and I'm neither, I know it seems, you know, kind of counterintuitive, not a data expert, and I'm definitely not a scientist.
Yeah.
But, like, the ACC's numbers over a multi-year period are good.
Right.
They just aren't.
Right.
And, yeah, I think what set some people off was, you know, like 5 or 6 years ago, whenever it was, their player of the year was Zion Williamson, the number one pick in the draft.
Yep.
Last year, it was Isaiah Wong, who's a nice player.
Yep.
I saw him play in high school at Monsignor Bonner, like 3 miles from my house.
Saw him play in the Jordan Center against Penn State.
Right, but like, no, he's not the number one pick in the draft.
No.
He's not even close. So, like, you know, if we're going from a Michael Jordan, Zion Williamson continuum to Isaiah Wong, Armando Bacot, it's not as good. It just isn't.
Well, let me give you. We'll close this out here. I mean, I agree with you, but I'll close out with this analogy. I think there are fans of the ACC and even coaches of the ACC that think it's 2005, 95, 85. That's the same attitude that I see from Indiana basketball fans in the Big Ten, that they can't accept it's 2024 and it's not 1987 any longer. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I never realized, you know, that there was so much of a sense of entitlement, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm from, you know, little old St. Joe's, and we don't think that way. But we don't think that way. And, you know, I'm studying this year, the here and now, right at this moment, and applying how the committee has acted in the past.
Exactly.
Nothing more, nothing less. Yep. Or as I often used to say, I'd put my own mother in the NIT if she played a crappy sketch.
And with that line, it's the mic drop. I will let you,
I got nothing better.
I will let you fade for the moment into the sunset. My friend.
Please do, because I'm sure this is going to go viral.
Oh.
And, I'm going to be selling apples on the Art Museum steps by April 1st.
My friend, always, as you know, a pleasure, whether we're talking this or just talking in person. Thanks so much. I appreciate you, Joe.
All right.
See you, man.
Have a good run.
Thanks. The outstanding Sweeney Murti joins us. Hello, my friend. I hope you and that great family of yours are doing well.
Well, we're doing great, Steve. How are you, sir? Nice to hear your voice.
I'm doing great. Feel great. Got back at 3 a.m. from Iowa. Let's go.
Yeah, I actually sat probably like 5 or 6 seats down from Fran McCaffrey at the 2008 World Series.
Yeah.
He was coaching, I guess, at Canisius, Niagara, one of the MAC schools, I forget which. And his brother is as you probably know, is a sports writer in Philadelphia. So,
and Jack's been struggling. His brother Jack, who wrote for years for Sports Illustrated and many other publications, one of the great basketball writers out there ever. And so after the game last night, Dick Girardi and I went down and we talked to Fran for maybe 5-10 minutes because we were asking him how Jack is doing, and he gave us a positive report that Jack is making positive strides, which is good. So we're happy to hear that.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice to hear.
All right. So now let's get – I think he was coaching Siena at the time.
I knew it was one of them.
Yep. So now let's get to one of our favorite topics, baseball. And I'm going to start with something that's right there in your own wheelhouse, and that's the Yankees. They made a lot of moves in the offseason. One move, but let's talk about the move they didn't make. You're around it every day. What do you feel were the reasons why they felt Aaron Boone should still be the right guy for this job?
It goes back to something Brian Cashman probably said a few years ago when he talked about the idea that, Joe Girardi was their manager for 10 years, and he hopes that Aaron Boone will be their manager for 10 years. Mm-hmm. I don't think it had anything to do with them feeling he was not connecting with players or pushing the wrong buttons or anything like that. The Yankees fell by the wayside last year for a number of reasons. I think the thing that connects, and this is probably frustrating to fans because if you remember the Yankees of any generation, you know how quickly they used to act on different things. But this is a different group altogether. Yeah. And Brian Cashman has been the general manager for over 25 years. He and Hal Steinbrenner have a very good working relationship. The trio of Hal Steinbrenner, Brian Cashman, and Aaron Boone have a good working relationship. They communicate about what goes wrong. There isn't necessarily blame assigned for, hey, you did this wrong, you're fired, I'm going to get somebody else. One of the things that, and I talk to Yankee fans a lot who have this thing like, well, his father did this, his father did that. I asked Hal about this once, and he said that, first of all, a lot of times what my father did didn't work, and he was publicly criticized for it.
Yep.
So I'm imagining there is a wonderful psychoanalytic paper of some kind that can be written on why Hal Steinbrenner turned out the way he did when his father was George Steinbrenner. And everybody wants him to be like his father, but when they wanted to act that way, that wasn't the popular version of George Steinbrenner. George Steinbrenner's image got rehabilitated because his team won World Series, and he stopped firing people.
That's right.
So they're in a kind of a stability right now that I think they enjoy the communication between them, and they're not going to necessarily assign the blame of a win or a loss to one of their failings, even if they are taking into account what areas they failed in. If that makes sense.
No, it does. Now, there's the acquisition of Juan Soto to this team, especially with right field. Well, you know how patient Soto is. But what do you think of that acquisition as an all-around player?
Well, one, he's a phenomenal player, and we talk about like what his down years were. I mean, if he had 15 more down years like that, he's skating into the Hall of Fame. Yeah. I think that the great thing that you hope to accomplish if you're the Yankees is a first inning where, okay, it doesn't have to be a 2 or 3 run homer in the first inning. Great if it is. But you're talking about between Soto and Judge, two guys who, routinely go deep into the count. Mm-hmm. I don't, wherever you want to put Anthony Rizzo, put Rizzo fourth behind them, he's going to do the same thing. I think if you attack it most nights, if you put out that same lineup most nights, you could find 20 to 25 pitches on the starter in the first inning. And just kind of start that machine rolling. It doesn't have to be a 5-run first. But you can make him throw 26 pitches in the first inning, and, maybe he's gone by the third.
Right.
The Yankees used to have this mentality of trying to get the starter out by the 5th inning.
That's right.
Those times have changed. Right. People don't care if you're not. People only want 4 innings out of their starters on some nights, on many nights, depending on who the starter is, because they can go deeper into their pen and match up well. So that philosophy of get into 100 pitches and get them out of the ball game, now you kind of have to pounce a little bit if you want to do that, because 4 innings and a team is generally going to be prepared to finish out a ball game if their starter only gives them 4 good innings. But the principle is the same. You just have to kind of step up the timeline a little bit. I think a lineup that has Soto and Judge and Rizzo, if you can get them all up in the first inning, and I know Judge just talked about batting third, which you probably want to you're going to break up lefties. It's going to be Soto, Judge, Rizzo. I would think you can do that to a number of guys, and pitchers better. You have your aces who are going to have a 1, 2, 3 first or a quick first, but starters 2, 3, 4, and 5 on a given night, they might find themselves nibbling, and if they nibble, well, you're going to find yourself with first and second and 1 out and Anthony Rizzo at bat, staring at the short porch. It's a daunting task.
Now, that also means, in all likelihood, Aaron Judge goes to center field with Soto playing right field. Look, we don't know if Judge is right or not after this toe injury thing and coming back from it. What does that move to center field mean to you in that regard for him? Because, I think he plays a good center field when he's out there. What are your thoughts?
I think he plays a good center field, but I don't think your team is at its best if he is your starting center fielder. But there's a reason a couple of years ago, it didn't work out because of, the reasons why, but he had himself a great postseason, was Harrison Bader. He actually played very well in that postseason, but the Yankees needed a center fielder. They knew they just couldn't keep running Aaron Judge out there.
Right.
And Judge is fine, but if you're going to try to figure out how to win at the margins, you're going to want a better defensive center fielder than Aaron Judge, if you can get him. And I think that's always the goal. I'm interested to see where Trent Grisham falls into this mix and exactly where he plays and how you move guys around late in the game. You don't want to lose an at bat from a Soto or a Judge if you can help it, but depending on the score, are you willing to risk that at bat for a better defensive outfield? I think it'll depend on situations from game to game. But if you're measuring it out, sure, you can play Aaron Judge in center field if you want, but the cumulative wear and tear of covering that much ground and putting that much more stress onto your body each day. Mm-hmm. And listen, I know there's a lot of people who sit there and say you're just standing around the outfield. That's what you do in your softball league. That's what you do, somewhere else. It's not what you do in the major leagues. These guys, if you see what these guys look like after they've played 9 innings, you'll understand that they put an effort into it.
Yep.
And trying to watch Aaron Judge play center field for 100 and something times, I don't think you're getting the best out of him that way. I don't think you're prolonging his health that way. I don't think that you're really putting your best alignment together that way if you can help it. I know you have to get forced into it, and you can do it, but I don't think it was their first choice, and it's not my first choice. You're just kind of, you can't reshuffle your deck every time. You kind of have to play what's in your hand.
Baltimore is interesting. New ownership is coming in. Now, despite the veiled threats, they were going to stay in Baltimore anyway. But they have a young team and probably aggressive ownership that can re-sign a lot of those guys. What do you think of Baltimore and the young talent they have? Because they're all not going to be of the same, quote, star power, but they won a lot of games last year.
I think that I wish they had taken a bigger swing this winter in free agency, and obviously, listen, they got Corbin Burns from Milwaukee, so that's a big move.
Yes,
that should certainly help. But I say that because it's really, really hard to sit here and say anymore in sports, hey, this team's young, watch out, their time is coming.
Right.
That time comes and goes really quickly.
Yeah, they're tight windows.
Seriously, Steve, 2 years ago, weren't we saying the same thing about the Toronto Blue Jays?
Yep.
And now where are they?
Yep.
The Blue Jays are inching closer to losing players to free agency, and it's going to be like, well, what did they do? That is, I think, the danger in looking at teams and saying, wait 2 more years. Man, it is so hard to have everything go right. 1 year, let alone back-to-back years. And everybody thinks that, the climb is not always straight up. You're right, they have a lot of young talent, but it is entirely possible that Baltimore struggles with some underperformance, some injuries, some slumps, things like that, and all of a sudden, they go from 101 to 88. And you say, what happened? But then maybe next year they go back to 96, and they're back on the upswing because things worked out. That's why what Texas did last year.
Yep.
They finished it, right? And you can't always count on our time is coming, wait till next year. The Brewers have been in that mode for a while. What the Phillies' runs have been the last couple of years, they've been great, but you're looking at when you're looking at Bryce Harper in his prime, you don't want to wait till next year.
That's exactly right.
When the Yankees have Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole, when they sign him for 9 years and 10 years, you're not envisioning the best of them in years 7, 8, 9. You're envisioning the best of them in years 1, 2, and 3. So go out and win now. And I think that's where Baltimore's mindset should be. That's where I hope it is. I'm pretty certain that's where the manager's mind is, because he knows those kinds of things. But it's going to be up to them to put that urgency on the players. And I don't know if that's going to take maybe some veteran presence during the course of the year, trade deadline, that kind of thing. But just something to push that a little bit and say, listen, it's well and good that you're young and you can see yourself competing for a few years, but also realistically, you're in the AL East. The Yankees and Red Sox are not going to be down forever.
Right.
They're going to start swinging and spending like they know how soon enough. So you better win now, which is why it is, in a lot of ways, disappointing that Tampa Bay was never able to really do that. That Toronto hasn't done that. And if Baltimore misses this window, those windows don't last forever, Steve, especially when you're playing in that same division with Boston and New York.
Yeah, and I talk about windows all the time. It's exponentially tighter than people realize. So last question is going to be about the Dodgers. We know what they did in the offseason. How fascinated are you at what the Dodgers can and can't do as they play through 6 months?
As everybody else is. I mean, this is a show that we are, no pun intended. We want to watch this and see how far they go because, frankly, you've seen them plenty of times win 95 and 100 games. Mm-hmm. It's only ended in the World Series once. That was in the shortened 2020 season in recent times.
Yep.
This team has put a lot into it, and listen, frankly, I always believe that sports are, we all love the idea of everybody having a chance and parity or whatever you want to call it, but I suppose sports are at its best when everybody's chasing a kind of common thing. And maybe that goes back, to childhood, your childhood, my childhood. We remember different dynasties. And those are, sports are always great when you're chasing a common enemy, so to speak. And I think the Dodgers being that right now is good for the sport, is good for baseball. A lot of interest in what they're doing. When the Yankees and the Dodgers are good, and the Red Sox and the Cubs and everybody else, sure, some people are going to roll their eyes, but check the TV ratings. The people are watching when those teams are in.
Oh.
There's interest when those teams are in. When Sports Illustrated used to be a thing, they were on the cover a lot. That's where the Dodgers are right now, and they have the best players, the most fascinating players. When you're talking about Ohtani and Betts, and I think you just want to see what they can do on a stage, and if they can complete this, it's fun to watch. They're a good baseball team. Are they going to win 100 games? Are they going to win the World Series? I don't know because that's not how the sport works.
6 months,
but all the time.
Wow.
But I'm going to enjoy watching it because I'm a fan of the sport and great performances, and I'm not one of these guys who's going to root from the ball in their face. Man, I'm going to see Betts and Ohtani play in the playoffs and see what they can do. No disrespect to other teams. If they happen to beat them, great. But you watch sports because you want to see greatness.
Yeah.
What could be better than seeing the stars, the biggest stars in the sport, in a playoff environment, seeing if they can perform?
Well, but there's another element too, and I'll just leave it as the last comment. People will tune in for a couple of reasons. One, they are rooting like heck for you. Number two, they're rooting against you and want to see you fall on your face, and they find that enjoyable too. Yeah. There's a couple of reasons.
Yeah, it's absolutely. But you know what? That's what drives it. And I think you find that there's probably some apathy or some segment of baseball fans who maybe didn't necessarily get drawn in by Diamondbacks and Rangers and didn't care to tune in. You can roll your eyes at Dodgers, Yankees, Dodgers, Red Sox, whatever you want to call it, but people will watch. People will come, Ray. People will most definitely come.
Yeah. Well, you get that mic drop moment. There you go, Sweeney. Hey, always a pleasure. Outstanding. Your work is tremendous. And appreciate you so much. You know that from all the years we've known each other.
Steve, it's great to hear your voice. Hope you had fun at Rec Hall. It looked like a lot of fun the other night. And I'll be listening and watching. And I always appreciate you reaching out. Thanks for your kindness.
You're the best, my friend. Thank you.